Welcome to the Marketing Rebels Breaking Business Barriers podcast. You've joined us for a special series event called Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. And we have Heather here today. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Hi, Shauna. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for doing this. This is a really, really important topic, and we don't talk about it enough on social media. It's all about, I'm making so much money, especially if you're in like the business and marketing space. So I am Heather Wylde. I am a sales strategist and trainer. My specialty is helping really purpose-driven coaches and healers and some service providers to create ways of selling that feel really good, really aligned, and are super, super effective for them. And this topic is important to me. I have struggled with my mental health my entire life. I was just realizing that I turned 48 in October. Next year will be 30 years I have been in therapy. And I say that, but and I'm grateful for therapy. I say therapy kept me alive, but personal growth made my life worth living. And that's kind of something juicy. I think we can have a good discussion about that. So I won't go too terribly much into that. But I suffer from a lot of depression and anxiety. It went undiagnosed when I was younger. It wasn't until I was 19 and was in college that I first started going to a therapist and ultimately got on antidepressants because my depression became suicidal ideation. And, since then, like I've done 12 step, I've done, CBT therapy, I've done, oh gosh, EFT and all kinds of personal and spiritual growth. And everything that I've done has helped my mental health be a little bit better. And just in the last couple of years, I've started really understanding trauma and really understanding that I am a trauma survivor. Like I have a kind of a joking way of saying, of conveying how much trauma. I have a tragedy resume a mile long. And now that I understand why like surface level mindset stuff didn't work. That's something I think Shauna and I can have a really
Right.
juicy conversation about, as mindset is not always the answer. And yeah, so I don't know. Let's just dialogue because I think more better stuff will come up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for everybody listening, my style here is, hey, we launch in and we just chat. So yes, absolutely juicy. And you know what? That the concept of mindset, I think, is a really great starting point for people who are kind of entering in here, because that's almost like the entrepreneur's world version of like that quick fix. That's the cure all. Oh, you just need to change your mindset and you'll have all the clients and you'll not be worried about how you're showing up, and don't worry about sleep. It's all mindset. And
Ooh.
it's so wrong.
It's like so the hustle culture is particularly toxic. I know it exists, but I I didn't it's funny, everybody kind of falls down particular rabbit holes when they get into the coaching world, and so I've talked to people that when I tell them about some of my really negative experiences with coaches who were mentally and emotionally abusive, which I know that's something that we wanna talk about as well, and they're just looking at me and they're like, "Oh my god, like, I haven't had any of that," right? So it kinda depends, like, what your gateway into the world was, and if you fall down, like, the bro marketing hole, then you're gonna hear a lot of and let me because I lost a friend over this fall. When I say bro marketer, like there are women that do this. I'm not hating and bashing men. Like
Yeah.
it's aggressive style of sales and marketing that both men and women do. But in that culture, it's very, much that hustle and, team no sleep, like hashtag no
Yeah.
sleep. And I'm like,
A-
no.
And and it's funny because I've spoken,
Mm,
not necessarily in this series, but in other episodes of Marketing Rebels, where we talk about how in this space, when we're going against the status quo, which really is that hustle culture, that bro marketing, very outdated, very much the old version of what marketing is, we move into more of a world of lifestyle entrepreneurship. This
Right.
idea where we're taking care of ourselves and living the life on our terms while simultaneously effectively marketing and selling our business in a way that feels good to us, but also feels good to the people who are investing in us and themselves, of course, because when you're investing, I think of myself, I've invested in so many really ridiculously large programs. I never think, oh, I'm investing in my mentor's yacht or whatever. I'm always like, I'm investing in myself. I'm investing in my own personal growth. Um, so yeah, I mean, when you shift from that bro marketing, beat your chest and make the sale, to, oh, it's all right. It's all right. We're doing this to live our life the best way we can.
Right.
And
And, to kinda, like, go back to the mindset part. So, I never intended to be a sales coach, but sales was something that was so hard for me to
mm,
grasp because I could not stand the way people taught sales because it was that very aggressive pro marketing, make the sale at all costs, rationalize like gaslighting and condescending to people and, all this stuff. And I would raise my hand and I would say, I don't think this is ethical. And they would mindset shame me
mm,
and tell me, "Oh, it's just your mindset. You've got a success block or you've got a money block." And I would go and I did have success and money blocks. And so I would go work on my mindset, but it was
that
still
didn't
inevitable.
change. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. So, so that was something that actually really damaged my mental health for a long time was, number one, like that I was doing all these programs, especially big programs, by these really well-known people, and everybody got results. And I really wasn't getting any results. And I really internalized that. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. Right. So that was something about the coaching world that actually really hurt my mental health. The other thing was that I would go and I would try these very surface level mindset exercises. So I'm not anti-mindset, but
Mhm,
if, if they're just telling you to do a bunch of affirmations and write your goals 50 times a day and, visualize for 2 minutes before you do your marketing or all that stuff, it's not that there's anything wrong with those things,
mhm,
but they're very surface level. They're not really effective. And the way that, but I shamed myself. I was like, this isn't working for me. Again, what's wrong with me? But now that I understand, like, as a trauma survivor, I'm like, that is like trying to plant seeds in a radioactive
mm,
field. Until I started, like, doing EMDR, that's one thing that has been really effective for helping me with trauma. It's kinda like now we're cleaning out the soil, and when I think a positive thought, it feels like it kind of goes into the soil and starts to, like, germinate. But, that's something that we don't talk about. It's like people have sold mindset as if it's this magic cure all,
yeah,
and it's become the scapegoat for everything. If something isn't working, it's your mindset, and people don't look any further. Let me tell you a crazy story about that. So I had a client that she was not being very productive. She was having problems focusing, and she, wasn't getting things done in her business. And she thought it was a mindset problem. And I was like, well, I mean, I do think you have some mindset issues, but I think there's something else here. And the more I talked to her, she finally told the story about how her husband won't sleep in the same room with her because her snoring was so bad. And I was like, you need to go get checked for sleep apnea, because if you have sleep apnea, then that's why you can sleep for 10 hours and still not be rested, right? So, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose with somebody, but if I had just stopped with, oh, it's a mindset problem, she would have never put that together.
yeah. Yeah. And I love that it's this holistic approach to sales, this holistic approach to marketing, to being an entrepreneur. This is why having discussions about mental health is so important in this space, because we wind up jumping the gun because we're always focused on that end result rather than the steps that it takes to get there, which includes doing a lot of the layer work, doing a
Mhm.
lot of the I wonder, staying curious about yourself just as much as your environment and what's happening here, not what's happening, because they always tell you make 5-year goals or whatever, and align your mindset. But then you do that if you don't have the tactics, if you don't have the skills, or
Mhm.
if there's a legitimate medical reason like sleep apnea, or for a lot of people there are other mental health or even just neurodiverse reasons why you may have a hard time taking tactical action towards those goals, even with the best mindset ever, then
Yes.
there's a problem. And you are not the problem. It's because you don't have a plan that works for you.
100%. And, another, big problem in the industry that I just published a book about in December
Mhm.
was, it's what every entrepreneur wishes they'd known before hiring a business coach. And it's, really breaking down what you need to look for before hiring someone, not only because you want to make sure you're hiring the person that actually has the expertise to help your type of business, right? You noticed in my intro, I said some service providers. I've worked with some service providers and I'm not familiar enough with their niche and I wasn't able to help them get great results. So I'm not going to work with those people, anymore. And that's okay. I don't have to be, great at everything, but I want to only focus on helping the people I know I can help. Right. But
There are a
you
lot
want
of
to,
people who don't do that.
oh no, 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 not at all.
They,
And
they go, oh yeah, it's close enough. Let's try it.
right. But I'm gonna charge you full price, but
Yeah.
let's try it, and then you
Mhm.
can't break this contract, and you've gotta pay for it no matter what, and, whatever, don't even, ugh.
Mm.
But, but, you also need to know, like, somebody needs to be good at helping that your stage of business too, your type of
Right.
business, your stage of business, right? And there's so many people that make these pie in the sky claims and they talk about all these testimonials and all these case studies, and what they're not telling you is that like 90% of people working with them, and I am pulling that out of my ass. I don't have a hard statistic for that, but a
Yeah.
whole lot of people working with them aren't really making much progress, but they will focus on that 5 to 10%, that very small percentage of people who are getting great results, and they'll use that to market, and then you feel shamed. You feel like there's something wrong with you. And then they're psychopaths and they just blame your mindset, and the truth is that they weren't the right person to help you and the program wasn't set up in a way to give you enough support because you can have great information, but if you don't have enough support to help you implement it effectively, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and based on your unique circumstance, I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent of I want to say the word customized, and I'm saying that loosely because I don't necessarily mean one-on-one.
Mhm.
I mean a circumstance where there are almost like a choose your own ending, but with informed decisions,
Right.
right? If this, then this. If this, then this.
Mhm.
And the this at the end is a variety of choices. So,
Sure.
okay, I understand that you want to do this. Well, here are a few choices that work.
Yep.
These subsect of those few would work best for your circumstances based on whatever information you've given me, and that
Right.
makes it a lot more customized than well, you want to do this, you must do that.
Right.
Well, that like you say, it just doesn't work. I've been in the same boat where I wanted to get I saw everybody around me in this big program. They're all getting results, so they say. Now again, so they say.
Mhm.
I'm sitting there going, "Hi guys, I'm doing the do. I'm doing the do." And it's killing me because it's hustle, because
Right.
it's you must do it this way and this is the way that works, so you've got to do it. And I wasn't seeing it. And I felt like obviously I'm doing it wrong. Now this was at least 5 years ago now.
Mhm.
Um and I've gone way beyond there. But I said, okay, why is this not working for me? And I listed out a lot of different circumstances that were going on within my life and within my mind. And I said, but I've got a really good outlook on this. And they kept going back to mindset. And I said, but my mindset's fabulous. You can talk to anybody. And I'm like, no, I've got this. Like, I am going to do this.
Mhm.
And I have no doubt. And I want money because
Mhm.
I know what impact I can have when I have money in my pocket. I
Mhm.
know how I
Mhm.
can help the world when I have money. I don't have the money block. I don't have, so what do
Mhm.
I need to do to fix this? And they didn't have an answer because
No.
it wasn't customized, because it wasn't actually there to serve every brain type, every
Mhm.
action type, every living
Mhm.
type. Because like we said, we very, very briefly mentioned this before, but there are a lot of people who will tell you you can't. You said this yourself. Not, let me clarify. Heather said this as a quote herself. She does not believe this.
Thank you. I don't know what's coming, but thank you.
Let's make sure that, if you're not a part of the 5 a.m. club, you're not going to achieve success.
No, yeah.
That's problematic.
Very. When we were discussing this before we started recording, my brain doesn't turn on until 9 p.m. And I have been shamed by, people like, not even in the coaching industry, but like, my entire life, people, why don't you work during the day? Because my brain doesn't work as well during the day. It doesn't matter what time I go to sleep. My brain is not going to really turn on and be remotely functioning until after like 1 p.m. And then at 9 o'clock, all of a sudden I'm like, I need to call this person. I need to call, and I have to learn to work around that, because obviously I'm not going to call my aunt at 9 p.m. Right. But I've just learned, and I've had to just adapt and just say, yeah, I could try to make myself wind down and go to bed, wind down at 9 and go to bed at 11, but I'm missing my most productive, most creative, most motivated, time of day.
Yeah.
And, that's like, when they used to make left-handed kids, they try to force them to write right-handed. Like, it's not that you can't do it, but it's not you, and it's not going to work. It's not, you're not going to be, as well. Can I address the thing about the group programs?
Absolutely.
So I love that you're like, everybody was getting results, but me, I thought, right? Or they said.
Right.
And it's one of my biggest problems with the group dynamic. I don't think group is a bad thing, like, per se, but it's very easy to be in those groups, and no one wants to be the person who's not getting results. No one wants to be, for number one, because they've gaslit everyone, and they're saying, like, we're fabulous and this is fabulous and everybody gets great results, so if you don't get great results, there's something wrong with you, right? So nobody wants to be like, I'm not getting, for one thing. For another thing, nobody wants to admit that they were bamboozled, and especially with, like, this is one of the things, like, I don't know if you've ever heard the psychology, but one of the reasons why they tell us to sell high ticket is because people who pay high ticket are less likely to bitch. People that pay lower ticket are more likely to complain about things. And one of the reasons why they're less likely to bitch at high ticket is because they're like, well, I paid high ticket for this, so it must be great. So if I'm not getting results, there's something wrong with me.
Perceived value. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, people get into this people pleasing thing. They want they want everybody else to think they're great. And this is, one of the problems with online world in general. When people are struggling, like, you can go and you can talk. I've had clients come to me, right? And they look like they're killing it. They look like they're making 10, 20 grand a month easy. They've got a podcast and a great website and 1,000-person Facebook group, and they can't even sell a $9 info product. And, but it's not okay to, like, talk about that and be honest about that, because then you're like, then people won't buy from me, right? And so in those group programs, it's that same thing. And they're like trying to make the mentor like them. And that's why it's another reason why I always take testimonials and case studies with a grain of salt, because it's like, how much of that was real and how much of it was the person just wanting to please the mentor.
That's true. And you know what? Something that brings up something in my mind, that is why it's so important that we have these conversations. Because if you know a person for who they are, if they've actually brought forth their authenticity in all that they're doing in their personal and professional brand, and in how they execute their sales and their program providing services, all that jazz, and you know them to be, a stand-up person, right? Typically, that person has created a space of safety, a space where their clients can, in fact, say, "Hey, this isn't working.
Right.
I need a new angle."
Right.
And it's in this type of conversation where we are able to open up that safety space,
Mm-hmm.
and where we're able to actually broach those conversations and say, hey, if you're not feeling safe, if you're feeling run down, if you feel like Bilbo Baggins, where you're spread like butter on too many pieces of toast, you should be able to say that. And if you can't, you might be in a bad space, not at your own fault.
No.
Maybe it is. Hey, listen, maybe it is your own fault. I'm not going to say it's, maybe you reflect and you're like, oh, damn, that was me. That's okay too. You're allowed to say, I goofed. Sorry, please help.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to say, hey, I'm doing my damnedest and this isn't working.
Yes.
Both are okay.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, just phenomenal points. So in the book, I talk about like if you can follow all the steps in my book. Like I know this stuff. I wrote the book, but I've still picked bad
Literally.
mentors, right? Yeah, I mean, I wrote the book literally, and I still like I got burned so bad over the summer.
Mm.
But I was uncovering like buried trauma that I've always suspected was there, and it finally came up this summer, and it kicked my ass. Like I was all I could do was sit on the couch, watch TV, and go to my personal training appointments. That's all I could do. Like I was just
Kudos for going to your personal training appointments, okay? That's killer.
well, and thank you. And the only reason I had a trainer at that point, it wasn't even like trying to be in shape. I just needed to get the fuck out of the house.
Yeah.
I needed to be accountable for leaving the house, and it forced me like I'm real funny, like I'm a very friendly person, but if I don't have a quote unquote real reason to talk to somebody, I won't talk to them. So
Mhm.
I can't just go, especially if I'm not feeling well and just start a conversation with somebody. But if I'm working or if I'm paying them, I can talk all day long. So it really was like a calculated thing of like I need companionship. I need to get out of the house, blah blah blah. So but those 3 weeks like were just awful. And like the next few weren't great, but those 3 weeks I really was just like, oh my God. It's like one of those things where I was relieved because I was like, okay, I finally know. But at the same time, I was like, fuck, I wish I didn't know this, like, oh my God, it sucked. So, and I made a purchase during that time. So, like you're saying, like, I do have to take accountability for making that decision and lesson learned. I don't need to have access to my credit card for big purchases and choosing mentors when I'm severely depressed. Like
Mhm.
it's not a
Mhm.
good combination. Um, but in the book I talk about you can follow all the steps and sometimes you just don't know until you get into a coaching relationship whether it's the right fit or not. And you can be very careful, and I think we should be very careful. All this hype about, oh, if you don't jump in right now, you don't believe in yourself. If
Mm.
you're waiting, it's because you don't believe in yourself.
Fear
Like
tactics. No thanks.
fear tactics, and it's very mentally and emotionally abusive, and the people that are comfortable using those tactics are going to be the ones that are going to be mentally and emotionally abusive in the coaching relationship. That's another reason why it's very important to educate yourself and be aware of what these mentally and emotionally abusive sales and marketing tactics look like
Mhm.
so that you can avoid that, right? So but one of the things I talk about is that if you end up in a situation and you're not making progress and it doesn't feel like it's the right fit, first things first, you need to speak up about it, and depending on how the person responds, like if they try to tell you it's all in your mind or whatever, then screw them, like go get another coach.
Yeah.
But give people the chance because sometimes they don't know, right? We don't It's important for us to communicate and just be like, yeah, I know I said I wanted to go in this direction, or I said I thought that strategy was going to be good, but it's just not working. And it may be that something just needs to be tweaked, or it may be that you need to go to a different strategy, but you won't know until you speak up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And even saying things and speaking up about your strategies, absolutely. But also just being able to say, hey, you know what? Um, I notice that every time we reach the winter months when it's darker,
Hmm.
longer, when our bodies just naturally want to sleep more.
Hmm.
And then you throw in, I already have a pre-existing mental health condition. Understanding and giving grace to yourself when you may not be as quick-witted.
Right.
Right? You may not be as ready to make those choices or dive in. Everybody starts preaching about new year, new me, dive into this program. And it's like, well, maybe let's reflect on that, look at our history,
Hmm.
and allow ourselves to say, you know what, this is not the time for me because I know myself.
Right. And anybody who tries to say, you don't trust yourself, you don't really believe in your dream. Oh, I guess you're somebody. One of my friends called me one day hot. I mean, just mad as hell because she had been on I think just a coffee chat, and somebody pitched to her, and which first off, like that's if somebody pitches to you on a connection call, it's supposed to be just a connection call, and they try to turn it into a sales call. Don't work with that person. That
Just
is sleazy.
the audacity. I just feel
Oh,
like the queen at this point. Like, excuse your face.
oh, no, right, but it gets worse. So the woman, she went into kind of, and I wanna bring up something in a second.
Mm.
Uh, she went into kind of people pleasing and let this woman kinda, like, run at her with this sales proposition, and when she said, you know, "Well, I don't know that I need this," the woman was like, "Oh, I see, your business is just a hobby." And it was a total, like, shaming, goading, try to get you to prove yourself by laying out I don't know. But the thing is, like, my friend literally had made $20,000 in sales that month. So, clearly not a hobby. Clearly
I have
way more than a hobby.
I have so many, I I'm that person who, like, I sometimes wish people could see on me, like, what I feel. It's just, like, the whole inside of at least my head, if not, like, slowly seeping into my body, like, it's just, like, flaming. Like, I don't know what to do with myself because I'm so mad.
So
That
activated.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and she called me, and, like, she was a very calm she was a mindset coach, but she was like a transformational, deep mindset coach. She was very cool person, very, very, ethical, and just a calm person, and she called me, like, cussing. She was mad as hell, and I was like, "You have every right to be mad at that, like, fuck her." Um
That's borderline comical. I love that.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, you just have to laugh at it. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this because this is something that I wrote my first book, and it was, Online Entrepreneur Survival Guide, and it was about choosing the right coach, but I was so mad when I wrote it that it was just kinda, like, all over the place. And so I took the book and whittled it down, like, from almost 300 pages to, like, 130, and that was what the second book was, and it's a lot more focused and it's a lot more positive. I just had to get that rant out of my system. But one of the things that I realized is that coaches most people that are coaches and healers especially, but I think even a lot of entrepreneurs, but especially coaches and healers, we are attracted to this business because we've had really good experiences being coached or healed, right? And we're all like trauma survivors on like a healing journey, and to some degree or another. And what I realize is that most of the really sleazy marketing and sales techniques are based in NLP. And
Mm,
NLP is not a bad thing. NLP
yeah.
is an amazing transformational tool when it's used for good and when it's used consensually.
Mhm.
But when it's used in marketing and sales to evoke a bunch of really strong emotions to try to force you to buy, and really strong negative emotions like shame and fear and scarcity and, not good enough and all these things. And I was speaking with someone who was I think they were an NLP expert. They were like a nervous system regulation. And it just occurred to me, and I said, "Do you feel like this stuff works especially well on trauma survivors, people who are already dysregulated?" And she said, "Absolutely."
Mm. Hmm. See, I don't have enough information. I'm actually, we're going to have a few people on the Marketing Momentum for Mental Health series who are experts in NLP. And I'd be interested to dive
Please.
into that a little bit more deeply and then further that conversation later because I don't have the depth of knowledge to be able to do any more than speculate.
Sure, sure, sure.
But
And I'm
that's
not
an
an expert.
interesting notion because I absolutely and I think that if somebody is highly intuitive, and especially if someone like me who has a good understanding of neuroscience and the human condition and how psychology works within our world, I use NLP without even thinking about it. I've
Sure.
done it and then had practitioners say, that's an NLP, right? And I'm like, no, I had no idea. But just like every tool, The person who uses it and their intention behind it makes a huge difference.
Sure. And
So
anything to
that's
do.
what I can bring into the conversation, is that idea that just like money, just like AI, and just like NLP, it can
Mhm.
be used for good or bad depending on your moral and ethical choices. And that perception of whether it's good or bad depends on the perceiver's
Sure.
moral and ethical beliefs, right? So it's a challenging topic, definitely. And I like it though. I like it though. It's
I
interesting.
I'm very I'll look out and see, because I've talked to other people that were in like NLP spaces and stuff, and they're like, yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. And so if you this kind of explains like um I think this is a very important topic to talk about, like accountability versus holding ourselves accountable, but also not beating ourselves up and blaming ourselves.
Right.
So my understanding is that, and I've noticed this in my own reactions, that when you're a trauma survivor and something triggers you, you don't always know that you've been triggered, but it's very easy to go into a freeze, fawn, fight, or flight response, right? And so there was times that I was on the phone with very predatory sellers that wouldn't let me off the phone. Now, I'm a grown adult. I know that all I have to do is hang up that phone. But when I would go into that trauma response, I would freeze and then I would fawn, which would
Mm-hmm.
mean like trying to make them like me. So, and then I ended up getting sold to like that a few times. Now, I do have to hold myself accountable, right? And be like, okay, that now I recognize that behavior. I'm not going to do that anymore, right? But blaming myself for like, God, that was stupid. I should have just hung up on them. Like, excuse me, if you're having those reactions, then if you're not already aware, you might have some deep trauma that needs to be looked at. And I think it's very important to, understand that when people are doing that kind of stuff, like it is not okay. It is not okay. It's not acceptable.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's not acceptable to be treated that way, and also just to follow follow the preachings of whoever you've chosen to follow, right? Like you've chosen this person, you've gone through the quote unquote right way to choose who you want to be, and they say something. If it doesn't sit right, it's allowed to not sit right. You're allowed to say, I don't think that's for me. You're allowed.
Yes, and that brings up something really important that I don't hear enough people talking about, and that is that there are people in this world that they're the real deal, and they're also a con artist, and they're also a little bit delusional. And so I've had several mentors that I'm happy I work with them because they were the real deal in a lot of ways, and I learned a lot. But what I've had to learn is that like how much of the Kool-Aid to drink.
Ha. Yeah, okay. I'm hearing you. All right.
When you said discernment, I was like, because one in particular, like she was really brilliant, and her way of explaining manifestation and the pathway of human consciousness and healing was just groundbreaking. I had never heard anybody. She used archetypes to
Yep.
explain both, and I had never heard anybody put it quite like that. She was mesmerizing, but it was like 85 to 90% of what she said was like so helpful. But then the rest was part like grandiose delusion. Like she was powerful and she was amazing, but she wasn't as powerful as she thought she was. And also there was a lot of this, con artist mind games, shaming, like you would ask a question and she would be like, I'm not going to answer that because you already know the answer. And she didn't know the answer. But she wasn't going to say that. Like she just
Mm,
played all kinds of mind games. So yeah, I feel like we kind of,
okay.
it's me. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
always going off about toxic
No,
men.
no, no, that makes it makes sense though, and it gives a lot of food for thought when you're looking at how do we protect our mental health? How do we make sure that we're honoring ourselves,
Hmm.
that we're not being sucked into hustle culture,
Hmm.
um, bro marketing, being conned, being it's there's so much involved in that. And I think it's a real like all very valid and important conversations that need to be expanded upon, that I'm hoping that this conversation will spark innumerable to come, because it needs to happen. We need to be open and honest about that. Now, that said, I'm wondering if there was something that you could bestow, we're going to go grandiose because you started talking about that. What if there was something you could bestow upon our listeners with regards to the wide variety of topics that we broached today? What would it be?
Prioritize your mental health. Prioritize learning, or relearning, or just at all, like whatever. Trusting myself, like that has been a huge thing. I had a lot of, both my parents were narcissistic. And so it set me up to be attracted to narcissists. It set me up to accept a lot of abuse and not recognize abuse, and to not trust myself. And so a big, 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 big part of my journey, especially in the last couple of years, is learning to trust myself and having that discernment. And as soon as I get that little, even just little thing of like, oh, wait, I don't know if that's right, stopping and not going into, oh, well, I must be being too sensitive. I'm being silly. Look, all these other people are doing it, all the like stuff we'll do to ourselves. Really do everything you can to, if you recognize those patterns, if you recognize that kind of that resonates, do everything you can to like heal and to learn to trust yourself, because that's what will keep us out of the frying pan, is, trusting those intuitive nudges that like, no, this is not the right situation for me. This is not the right person, the right mentor, right job, right client, anything. So that's my biggest thing.
That's amazing. And when you're not sure, when you're like, I am in this business, I have been hustled, I have been hustling, I have been through the ringer in so many different ways. But I still need to make money in business. And I do not want to be that person who's burnt out and a shriveled piece of what I used to be when I finally make it, so to
Mhm.
speak. What are you telling to those people? Where are you directing them?
So, well, I mean, first off, it's super common. I definitely had that. Like, I had like the most successful point in my career, and I crashed and burned afterwards. So that is, it's pace yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. But you need mentors that are going to empower you and really support you in creating your business your way, finding the ways of marketing and selling that are going to work for you and your business. I have a really amazing sales quiz, that it will it will point out more to you about where you're losing sales than your last two business coaches. Just this quiz and just getting the results, and it will show you like, my thing with sales is that, you don't need 1,000 leads a month. You don't even need
Mm.
100 leads per month. You need to know how to really recognize the right leads as quickly as possible and not waste time nurturing people that aren't going to go anywhere. That's how you make more sales without all the hustle. But yeah, get in my world if you're ready for sales. If you're ready for marketing, go talk to Shauna. I'm not a marketing person, but if your marketing is bringing you like good leads already, then but you need to convert more of them, then come talk to me, and I can tell you if I'm the right person to help you, or if I need to refer you to somebody else.
Yeah, and that's the perfect way to do it. Just as like a disclaimer to all of the people who are watching here, that is the way to do it. Figure out if you can actually help them,
Mhm.
and if you can't, do so. If you can't, send them to someone who can.
Yes.
And if you want to find out more about your sales and whether or not you have gaps in it, which you probably do, doesn't matter how amazing you are at sales, you probably have gaps, and you might as well fill them so that you can achieve more success with less effort, with less grind. It makes more sense. You can find that link in the show notes. I'm really excited for you to dive into Heather's world because it's amazing. And don't forget that these conversations are just the start. There are more to come, not only just within the house of Marketing Momentum for Mental Health, but also across the board.
Mhm.
It doesn't stop with us, guys. It doesn't stop. We are a community. We are here to help. We are here to support. If you have questions, please reach out. And don't forget to like, follow, save, subscribe so that you can catch the next episodes of Marketing Momentum for Mental Health series, as well as, of course, Marketing Rebels, because who doesn't want to shake up marketing and knock it on its ass? With that, we will chat with you soon. Bye now.